And basically, as long as he can stay healthy, I think, he can do something with the Jets and they could be competitive.
Yeah, it's to me it's almost it's borderline on a feel good story to a certain point because it's like because he kind of got done wrong, so you almost just want Justin Fields to have this success.
Yeah, you're like, how many times can this guy get, taken to the shed and not given a proper chance? But I think the Jets they have no choice. They've got to be patient, and especially with a new coach, you kind of get that 2-3 year chance. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I think he can be solid.
Our Jets um our Jets game stretch of games to watch are four out of their first 6 games. 4 out of their first 6 games because
Mm-hmm.
they come out of this. They come out of the gates pretty against a pretty stiff competition.
Mm-hmm.
So 3-6. They start off with Pittsburgh. Okay, that's kind of a revenge game right there. But then they get the Bills. They get the
Mm-hmm.
Bucks on the road. They get the Dolphins on the road. Okay, obviously we just went over how the Dolphins are kind of a lesser team right now, but at the same time that's still a rivalry. And
Mm-hmm.
then they get the Cowboys, and then they got to go overseas to play the Broncos. So you've got the Bills, the Bucks, the Cowboys, and the Broncos in your first 6 games, and this Jets team that is very fresh start, very new look, a lot of guys looking to prove themselves. I don't know if that's necessarily an enviable situation to play all these playoff teams and playoff contenders so early.
No, that's a tall task right there. They've got the weapons on. They've got weapons on offense. Like I said, they got Garrett Wilson. They've got Brees Hall. They've got pieces. It's just going to be, what does this offense do? It all comes down to Fields. Are they going to try to be methodical offensively? Eat up clock, let your defense kind of carry you. Now this defense is still somewhat solid. They got a couple pieces that are gone, but still solid. But like you said, it's some heavy hitters. It's not like you're playing sub 500 teams for the first 6 games. You're not playing the Giants twice, or something like that. So I think right now you got to look at that and say, okay, we got to try to stay at least 500.
No, and you could have your confidence shaken by that too, and that 500 thing. I mean, that's a tall task for 500 because you've at that point let's say the Jets. Okay, there's enough of a there. It's opening week and there's enough of a revenge factor. Let's say they pull the upset, if you can call it that, over the Steelers, and
Mm-hmm.
let's give them the Dolphins. Let's give them the Dolphins win. That
Okay.
means that they absolutely have to beat the Cowboys because they're certainly not a better team than Buffalo, Tampa, or Denver, and that's with overseas travel. So they really need to at minimum win that Cowboys game.
That's what the schedule God said. Here you go. That all you can do is play the teams that they give you. It's a tough task. And it's they're gonna take some lumps. It might be a situation where this team starts out 2-4, 1-5, and then all of a sudden towards the end of the year starts to turn it around and they ride that wave into next year. I don't think a lot of people aren't treating them like the Saints, saying that they have no chance and they're that horrible. But yeah, they're gonna take some lumps. They've got to figure out who they are. They do need some pieces, but I think if they can start to get the culture there, and I think that's key. The first year is just get your culture set. Figure it out. You're gonna take lumps. The second, third year, hopefully, you'll get your rhythm and start to see some success.
As we move to the NFC West, as the NFC West turns, we start off with San Francisco 49ers. Now, the NFC West is a funny division to me because at one point the Niners just had their way with this. And then the Rams kind of they used to joke about how they sold their soul for the Super Bowl, but they've kind of hung around a little bit, especially as the Niners have kind of had a little bit up and down, dealt with some injury concerns, and they've stayed in the mix. Seattle with Geno's resurgence for a little bit that they had, they kind of stayed in the mix too. So this division kind of stayed a little bit more competitive than it probably otherwise should have. And it doesn't quite look like the Niners slice the cake like it probably should have. And this is a Niners team that has been on the cusp of a Super Bowl a few times at this point.
The Niners are a bit of a different team than they have in the past. Gone is, Debo's gone. They've got some young guys at receiver who they've, moved up and, we're hoping they're going to, be able to take over.
That's an interesting point. Like everyone's talking about the young guys, like Purcell. No one's talking about Brandon Ayuk, who was the story last year as far as getting his contract.
Yeah, exactly. Like they were like, oh, if he gets his contract, then that's it. That's the key to it, and they just fell apart. But let's be honest, the Niners go as far as CMC takes them, and if he's healthy, they're close to an as elite team as there is in the league. If he's not, then I don't want to dump on Brock Purdy, but the struggle was there, and you saw it. Yeah. So basically, the Niners will go as far as CMC takes them, and I think that's a fair assessment. Their window is in my opinion, is just about closed. Like they're older, they still got a decent defense. Fred Warner and some guys. They still perform at a high level, but this isn't the Niners of 2 or 3 years ago where, they were in it every year and we were like, okay, that one of these Super Bowls they've got to win. Like they've got to pull it out. I think at this point, maybe it's good that they're not talked about in that elite of the NFC. Maybe that's going to help them. I don't know. I don't know. But if CMC goes down again, then I think it's a wrap. And I think you really need to start looking at this team as a whole and saying maybe it's just time to blow it up.
Although maybe to play a little devil's advocate here, or to make Niners fans feel like the glass is still half full, given the status of the rest of this division, with Seattle kind of being in a little bit of flux right now, the Rams having age issues, the Cardinals being the consistent question mark that they are, if CMC does get hurt again, with kind of how they kind of found Garendo last year, is there kind of enough to keep them at least competitive with the rest of the division, given where the rest of the division stands? Or is it that much of a death blow with CMC's injury risks?
No, I still think they can be competitive, but it's going to be a lot closer than they want it to be. Like with the Rams, their issue is Stafford. If he can stay healthy, then they're the team to beat. If they got to go to Jimmy G, I don't know. I really don't know what Jimmy G is going to give them. The other two teams are in flux, so they're trying to stay relevant at this point. So the Niners, it's health. They're battling the health bug. If they can stay healthy, then they've got a good shot to win the division, because I don't know if Stafford can make it a whole season. I really don't. He's taking epidurals in the back. It's one thing when you're doing 11 on 11s in in training camp. It's you're not taking hits. So I think the first couple games you're going to see what becomes of the Rams, but the Niners, they need CMC to be healthy. That's just what it is.
Side note here, because you brought up Purdy's struggles last season. They still gave him the money. So does that contract look worse than Dak's?
Wow.
Especially considering the amount of money that the Niners have paid out. I don't know how they're not in salary cap hell at this point, because they've given out a lot of big money contracts, but they still gave Brock his money.
Well, let's be honest. Brock came up at the right time. If it was a year or two ago, Brock wouldn't have sniffed that type of money. But the way that teams are quarterback starved, once you've got somebody who's shown they can perform, you're going to throw them the money. That's just what it is. Daniel Jones, the Giants thought he was the guy. They threw him $40+ million like it was going out of style, and now look.
Yeah, 2 teams later, they're probably still paying him.
Yeah, the Bobby Bonilla of the NFL, right?
Yes.
Um, I think this is the year where you can truly make that decision of whether it was a bad move or not. I think last year was kind of rough. Um, yeah, CMC went down, but then you were dealing with the other injuries on this team. So, and I don't think Purdy was horrible, but I think, it was the first year where it was like he was the guy. And like I think he should have felt comfortable knowing that he was the guy and he had to go through it. So now this year, he knows when your cornerstone running back goes down, what you got to do. So I think this year, if he struggles and it's not because of injury to anybody, he just struggles, then yeah, I think you sit there and say, well, at least Dak puts up some decent numbers. But at the same time, if you look at both of these cats, who's been in the playoffs? Who hasn't?
So jury's still out on putting him in the same category as Mr. $60 million, Dak Prescott.
I right now, you ask me today, I think his contract is better than Dak because of what he's done. But if he just doesn't do it this year, and they end up both sitting on the couch watching the playoffs, you can kind of start to sit there and say maybe they're the same.
Yeah. Our kind of isolate of their schedule as far as what's a pivotal part here. We kind of looked at this as they need to take control of this division, and they have an opportunity to do so very early on. In their first 5 games, they play each one of their divisional opponents. Seattle first, Arizona in the middle, and the Rams is the 5th game. Sandwiched in between, of course, are very winnable games against the Saints and Jaguars. So 3 divisional games in their first 5 games. How crucial is it for them to win all 3 of these games, all 3 of these divisional games right off the bat?
I think you got to win them all. I really do. I think it's a 2-team race. I really do, unless Arizona lights it up all of a sudden and they kind of figure it out, which they just haven't been able to yet. I think it's a 2-team race, and I think the Niners need to win all the games. I think they need as much cushion as possible, because in the back of your head, you have to think, okay, what happens if CMC goes down again? Like, it's almost a yearly event. So now you're like, okay, well, maybe we get that cushion. If we lose them for a couple games or we rest them, then we're okay. We should be able to, muddle it through. But no, I think they need to win those games.
And they not only do they have an opportunity for that, but to furthermore your point, it may be very, very necessary not only to win those 3, but to beat the Saints and Jaguars as well. Because the next 3 after that, Tampa, Atlanta, and Houston, and 2 of those 3 are on the road. So that's a 5-0 start that's very necessary going into 3 significantly more difficult games.
Yeah, as it'd be better off to go to, and let's say it ends up being 6-2 than 3-5, because you just screwed the pooch and just couldn't get it done. So you want, like I said, you want those division games. If you can get out of there 5-0, if you take a couple losses over the next 3, it's not as bad, because like we said, with the Rams, we don't know if Stafford's going to survive or be walking. So take the first 5, get them done.
Yeah, and they play the Rams not too far after that next little mini gauntlet stretch.
Oh, boy.
So speaking of those Rams, next up, and you hinted at it before, the big thing with the Rams is how much really does Stafford have left in the tank here? That's not only the question mark this season, it's been the question mark for the last few seasons. Because it's crazy to think that a team that's been so competitive over the last 2 years and has a Super Bowl in recent memory could be their success could hang so much on a 40-year-old quarterback.
Well, let's not forget that Stafford wanted a the little extension and whatever on the contract, and at first the Rams were like, we don't know, and then there was talks that the Giants and a couple other teams were interested, And the Rams said, go ahead and find your deal, and we'll talk. And just before these things really started to heat up, the Rams said, nope, we're going to resign you. And they resigned him. Maybe the Rams should have said, all right, maybe let's trade him. No, like, let's be honest. So let's say, they trade him, get you a couple picks. Like, they weren't going to be first round picks, but if you could wrangle a second and a third, or a second and a fourth, probably a second and a fourth because of his age, you get something and prepare for the future. So now you're sitting there, but
why are teams so chicken shit with calling quarterbacks bluff? Like, oh yeah, go ahead, and like, oh no, here's your money.
Because now they're sitting there, kind of like the Niners are with CMC every week. Is he going to make it through? Is Stafford going to be okay? One good hit in the back. Is he like out for 3 or 4 weeks? Are those 3 or 4 weeks going to be pivotal games? Can Jimmy G get you through that and be 500 ball? Like, honestly,
if that's a legitimate fear in their head, then they could have just avoided this entirely and let him go out to the Giants or wherever else.
Yeah, but don't forget, like you said, the Rams were a team that sold their soul for a Super Bowl, and they'll do whatever they can to stay relevant. Sometimes you got to take a hit, and sometimes you got to take a step or two back so that you can come back and have another 5 to 10 years of relevancy. Right now, your future rests on the back of a 37-year-old man who's not in the best of shape, who's taking epidurals. They give those to women who are about to have babies, man. And like, that's some pain, dude. Like, I'm not having them shoot me in the back. I'll retire. Give me my walker and give me my money, whatever you want. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm done. I'm not taking an epidural, bro. It's not worth it. But the Rams swear it is. And don't forget, Cooper Kupp is no longer there. They were able. They told Cooper Kupp to kick rocks, but you kept the geriatric wonder known as Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
And all respect to Matt Stafford, all respect in the world. But like you said, you've got to look at your franchise long term. If Stafford doesn't make it out of this season, then they're done. They're done. I'm sorry, they're done. There's no way. This is the swan song.
Yeah. It very much is. And I mean, it could be a stain on the legacy of Sean McVay to the point where he's kind of teased walking away before. If this season goes awry, he probably should just like walk away then, because that's not going to be a good look going into your next job. Go to the broadcast booth, go podcast with Peter Schrager, work on whatever's next, because
come join us. Come join us. Work for free.
Sunday Scaries, yes. Special guest analyst Sean McVay.
Well, I'm not going to pay you, but I'll take you to McDonald's or something. I'll hook you up. But yeah, and then maybe wait for a good job to come up, and then there you go. But it's one of those things. Maybe he's like, all right, I'll ride this out, and somehow the Rams find a quarterback in the rough, and I don't know. But right now, their future or their time right now depends on the back of Matt Stafford.
How much blame is on Sean McVay for, how this team's, I don't want to say the wheels falling off because they stayed competitive, but they stayed competitive by the string of their teeth, and they're not leaving much else after this is done. So how much blame do you put on Sean McVay for kind of not keeping the cupboard full for whatever was post Super Bowl?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if he's totally to blame. Yeah, he's probably got a lot of say. So I'd say he's partial. I'm not going to hold him full, because you still got a general manager who should be like, hey, Sean, I don't know if Matt, let's be honest, is Matt's back gonna do anything? Maybe you package some picks, or maybe you got some players. Maybe you've got to say, all right, maybe maybe you don't go after Devontae Adams, and you get yourself a decent young quarterback to sit. Jameis Winston, we joke about him, but Jameis has proven he can win you some games. Maybe he becomes a bridge guy for a year, and you get your picks and then move on from there. Because right now, I don't think Jimmy G can do it. Like, really, he's been in this role, and he can't do it. So unless Jimmy G is going to come out of nowhere, win you 7-8 games in a row, and take you through the playoffs, which he's not. It's
Jameis Winston
time.
in Tinseltown, imagine.
I'm telling you, man. Yeah, the guy had it rough in Tampa, but you know what? The guy has proven that guys love to play for him, man. Guys will go through a wall for Jameis Winston. So let it happen. Should have kept Coop. And kind of maybe you were a little above 500 for a year or two. Get your franchise guy and work your way back. Your defense is young, so they're going to probably hang their hat on that defense. They got a lot of young guys who are really good, but Grandpa can only do so much for you, and you can't put him in a wheelchair, and you can't throw 70-yard bombs in a wheelchair with a needle hanging out of his backside.
Yeah. Now, the one saving grace for the Rams is kind of a little bit of their schedule because they've got some difficult opponents, but there's kind of some cupcake games in between. Now, the problem with the cupcake games in the NFL is it creates the ever dangerous scenario of a trap game. So, for instance, they start off the season against the Texans, and then they get the Titans in between before they have to play the Eagles. And then they get the Colts in between before division rivalry with the Niners. And then but if you consider the Niners still rebuilding, you could say, okay, they get the Colts and the Niners in between the Eagles before they have to play the Ravens. And then they get the Jags, a bye week, and the Saints, and the Niners and the Seahawks before they play the Bucks. So that's a lot of kind of middle-of-the-road teams before another decent team. And then they get Carolina and Arizona before Detroit. And then they get Seattle, Atlanta, Arizona to close it out. So you've got this Rams schedule where they got a lot of games low-hanging fruit. They can kind of build up for a high level of wins, but they could also fall into traps and drop one of these easy games. And if they get blown out by all the good teams, they could wind up hanging on by a dear thread and praying that they win some second supermarket trip tiebreaker scenario.
At the end of the day, it comes down to the health of Matt Stafford. If Matt Stafford stays healthy, they should be good. And that part of the schedule where they're playing some of the heavy hitters, it's going to be some battles. But if Matt Stafford isn't available, or you go through a good stretch where he's not 4 or 5 games, then those games that were somewhat cupcake or winnable become a lot closer, and the ones that you were maybe favored by 3 or 4 or 3 or 5, maybe now you're the underdog.
So you think they're a mature enough team that they can withstand the threat of a trap game as long as Matt Stafford is the ultimate equalizer, if he's healthy?
If he is healthy, then yes, I think he can. I think, because Puka's been around, Kyron's, couple years in, so it's not like they're a fresh face full of kids who have never, dealt with anything before. They understand.
Which they were at one point.
Exactly. But, and I said this at the beginning of the show, the quarterback is the most important guy. And they believe in Matt Stafford. Do they believe in Jimmy G? I don't think so. And Jimmy G's proven it. Let's be honest, man. The guy almost won a Super Bowl, threw the ball away, threw a pick, and then there you go. His career went down the toilet. He plays good for a quarter and a half, and then there's that one play where it goes down to shitter. It just becomes a mess. You can't get it right. They need Matt Stafford. If Stafford is there, they will be competitive. But if it's 4 or 5 games, or it ends up being 2 games here, 4 games here, 1 or 2 here, and these are like important games, it's gonna be a problem. And the cupcakes will not be cupcakes.
They'll wind up losing to the Titans, Jags, and Panthers.
You never know what the Titans. All right, the Titans, I don't know. The Jags, maybe, but if it's Jimmy G, you don't know. He throws a pick.
Yeah.
It's honest. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Jimmy G, man. Good looking guy, but you ain't winning games on your looks. That only happens for Tom Brady, and he's hung it up now, and he's still looking pretty.
Ding.
Ding. If you know, you know.
Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals. This is always.
Oh my God! Why?
they're a mercurial Arizona Cardinals. They're not the usual doormat, but they still always wind up being the doormat because even when they have potential, they never fully realize it. And this is like the year where it's like the 1 year in Kyler Murray's career where people aren't chirping about Kyler Murray.
That's because he's not talking about playing COD and not studying the playbook. The Arizona is like, I don't get it, man. It's a team with some talent, and they just can't get it right. It's like someone gives you the contra code, and you still can't beat the game. It's like, I don't get it. Like, there's talent there. Like, this is the year. Like, literally, they've got to win like 10 games and be like legit because they've got talent, and I just don't know. John Connor can't run forever. That man's been in the league, I swear, it feels like 30 years. And he's still doing it. I give him credit, but like, this is the year. They got to figure it out.
He is the Terminator.
He's got to be, man, because I remember him in Pittsburgh, and it was like, oh man, he wasn't gonna make it. They were gonna cut him. He was done. And then he goes to Arizona, and he's churning out 1,000-yard seasons like it's nothing.
Well, until he gets hurt in week 10 every year.
Yeah, that's true. And he's out for like 4 weeks. Then he comes back and ends up with like 1,003 yards or something. But either way, he gets it done. But
like, you're right on the talent. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. I mean, if Kyler's got any kind of talent in his arm, he should be having like Matt Stafford prime type of seasons, 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns. Like, the Lions were terrible, and Matt Stafford was still lighting it up. That should be Kyler Murray right now.
Yeah, it's just like, what is the problem? Why can't we get it done? Is it Kyler? Is it maybe he's just should just go back to playing baseball, go back to the A's and call it a day? I don't know, but this team, like, they have these little spurts where you're like, oh man, there's some talent here. You got McBride, he comes out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, this is it. They've got it, and then they just screw the pooch, and you're like, same old Cardinals.
Same old Cardinals. Well, if they are same old Cardinals, we spoke earlier about coaches being on the hot seat. Jonathan Gannon's in his third year now, and he's his seat's got to at least be getting warm at this point with all the talent there. Now, we know he's a defensive guy and all the talent's on the offensive side, but that's also, the head coach. If that's not your forte, you got to have a coordinator that can kind of match your expertise from the other side. So, like, how hot is Jonathan Gannon's seat? This is a guy that came from a Philadelphia Super Bowl team.
Yeah. The seat's quite toasty. I would think at this point, like you said, 3 years in, it's like, okay, what do we got here? Like, it's time to, you're at this point, the Cardinals need to be that team in like week 13, 14, where teams are like, oh man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play. And it's like, all right, we're prepared for our playoff push. Like, it's got to happen. So you can't blame it on Kyler anymore because he's kind of straightened himself up. So that scapegoat, I think, is gone. You've got the pieces around. Yeah, I think they could have shorn up the defense a little better. So this is what you've got. You got to put up 10 wins. You got to put up at least 10 wins, I think, to cool that seat down somewhat. You've got to be like in it to the end. There's no excuse.
J.J. Watt was a few years late. if this was the team, if this was the Arizona team that J.J. Watt joined, he might have actually had a chance to make a difference on them.
Exactly. He plays his 10 snaps. He probably could have done something, but that's what it is. Like, they have the talent. I just don't understand why they just can't put it together. But this is the year. If they start out slow, something's going to happen. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. And Arizona's stretch of games to watch. We've kind of wrapped this as an overall Road Warriors team in their second half.
Mm-hmm.
Because they come out of the bye with back-to-back road games on Monday night against the Cowboys, and then they go up to Seattle. So I guess that's technically a short week of sorts. And then to close the season, they finish with 3 of 4 on the road, 1 in Houston. They come home for the Falcons. They go out to Cincinnati. This is not the time of year you want to play the Bengals. And then they head to LA to play the Rams in the finale. So a lot of road games in the second half, and some pretty good teams to at least teams full of talent amongst those road games.
Yeah, but this team has talent too. It's just, can they put it all together? Can they be competitive? Is Kyler's head in it? Does he really want to be an NFL quarterback? Does he want to do this? Like, this is it? Because they've got, Maserati Marv out there. You got McBride. You got Connor. You've got pieces here. You guys can score points. It's just, can you win games? Like, there's nothing else to it at this point. It's either they can do it, or you start saying, you know what? Maybe this guy isn't the right coach. Maybe we got to figure something else out, and get some defensive pieces. Trey Hendricks is going to be a free agent next year. Maybe you overpay a little bit for him. If he can give you 15 sacks, there's some defense. I don't know, but they've got to put up 10, 11 wins to save that guy's job. I think so.
So to you, this is almost like the Madden team. This is the video game joystick type of team. Everyone's a 99. The talent, if they're going to be successful, they're going to be successful just because sheer amassing of talent, and it doesn't matter who they play, they'll blow the doors off.
Okay, I don't know if they're like Bengals blow the door off, but they're going to put up high 20s. They're going to put up points. It's just whether it's going to be consistent, and if that defense is going to hold. There's something that just doesn't click with this team. I don't know what it is. There's talent there, but they just can't win. I don't know if they've reached that point with this coach, and they need a new voice to kind of take them to that next level. Then they got to be able to finish. The games are supposed to win. They need to win, and they're going to probably have to steal a couple for them to have any chance.
To that point, it's almost like a lesser degree of the Bills. Like, the Bills have all the talent. They're right there. They've had a little bit of the pedigree, and you start to wonder, okay, if we're going to get over the hill, maybe we need a different coach. Maybe McDermott's not the guy. The Cardinals are like way down the ladder, a kind of microcosm simile of them where, okay, they got all this talent, but they're so inconsistent. They never put it together. So it's like, it's just the coach. We just need a new voice.
Yeah, but see, the problem is McDermott kind of gets a pass too because they're in the age of Mahomes. You get that. It's kind of unfair, but you get that pass. It's like with Jordan. Like, no one can get past Jordan. It was almost like Brady and Peyton. Like, unless you were one of those two guys, you'd sprinkle in a Big Ben every 4 years maybe. But unless you were able to do something, those were the guys. That was it. You couldn't break through that wall. Buffalo has kind of chiseled it a little bit, but they win their division every year. You can pencil them in for the playoffs. You can't do that with Arizona because they have those lulls where they just suck, and then at the end of the season they come. But they're every end of the year they're scoreboard watching, and then it's like, by after the 1 o'clock games, your season's over. See you later.
Yeah. To round out the NFC West, of course, is the Seattle Seahawks, and this is obviously a significant team in flux because
how the mighty have fallen.
Now, Gino's gone. They bring in Sam Darnold, so the quarterback, they still got some consistency there, but they kind of promoted internally after Pete. That's kind of not really taken off. Kenny Walker has had significant injury concerns. They get rid of DK Metcalf, who kind of wound up being a little bit of a head case, like Stephon Diggs light, if you will. So this is a team that's kind of like addition by subtraction. They've drafted really well, but they're still waiting for the pieces to kind of come together. And, hopefully, maybe for their hope, Sam Darnold is kind of like the missing piece, and maybe they just kind of run out the gas on Gino and they needed a new piece in there.
Well, basically, yes, you get Sam Darnold. Now you're hoping you get Minnesota Sam and not
Jet Sam.
Yeah, you're that's what you're hoping for. DK is gone. All you have is Najigba, really, as your wide receiver. There's, you've got some pieces there. The run game is really suspect. Like you said, it's all injuries. You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, they have
Charbonnet could be the guy, could end up being the guy if he stays healthy. They've got guys there. It's just for them, it's health at the running back position. But does this team offensively scare you?
no, and that's the thing. Because Charbonnet, yeah, he stays healthier than Walker does, but albeit if not just barely. But he also doesn't have the explosiveness that Walker does. Walker is a game changer.
He is, but if Charbonnet is going to be your banger, and if he gets you 17 to 20 carries, 89, 90 yards, and a touchdown, I think you take it if you're going to get that every week. It's great, that Walker, can break you off 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game, but he's not going to be available every game.
Yeah.
So you've got to sit there and say, all right, Sam, now it's up to you. You got to handle it. Now, it was different because in Minnesota, he had the weapons, he had the run game, he had a bit of everything. The defense was solid. Yeah, he was a quarterback, but it didn't feel like Sam had to do it all on his own. In this situation, it feels like it's got to be a little more. It's got to be more Sam. So we're going to find out if he's the guy, because this is it. If you're the guy, you wanted that big contract, here it is. Minnesota doesn't have much room. Seattle doesn't have much room for error, especially in this division. Like they've got to probably win out the division or come close to it, their division games, and probably steal a couple. Like they're not horrible, but they don't strike fear. I don't fear them.
And especially to your point on the weapons, I mean, Minnesota had a lot of weapons. They had Addison, they had Hawkinson. He was hurt, but eventually came back. Jefferson, of course. Aaron Jones was very, very good behind in the backfield. So there were a lot of weapons for Sam to throw to. And as we go through all the weapons in Seattle, it's not nearly the same quantity / quality situation.
Yeah, there aren't as many home run hitters. Now, mind you, if they kept DK, maybe added one more receiver, or maybe upgraded tight end a little bit, possibly in some way, you could sit there and say, okay, basically they're going to hang their hat on their defense. Their defensive secondary, they've got Woolen, and so Witherspoon. They've got their defenses, their corner secondary is really good. So they're going to hang their hat on that and hope that Sam can lead this offense, not make too many mistakes. He's basically a high-end game manager. Hate the term. I don't think I've used it yet this season, but I've used it. It's the first time, game manager. I don't know. I don't see him throwing for 350. I don't see him lighting it up like he did in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. It's going to be that, a lot of heavy run, and Sam will take his chances. Maybe it's going to be a lot of play action out of that offense. It'll be interesting to see, but it's going to be on that defense to keep them afloat.
Yeah, and I mean, there wasn't like let's go. I guess we could compare them to the Raiders in a certain sense, as far as there's question marks and consistency, but there's like just enough talent there where if things break right, maybe they're competitive, maybe they burst some bubbles. You kind of like that comparison, or?
I guess it works. I think Seattle's defense is better in the back end than the Raiders are, because the Raiders have Mad Max and they've got a couple little pieces, but I think they're secondary wise, I think Seattle's better. I guess Gino and Sam would be on par. The run game, I'd almost give Seattle the edge because they've got 2 guys who can do it. And it's if Genty gets hurt, then it's going to be tough sledding for the Raiders. So they're definitely going to have to be wary of that. But yeah, I could see it, but I think Seattle has a little bit more room for error than the Raiders, slightly, not much, but it just.
Oh yeah, the AFC West is a gauntlet, a dogfight every week.
Now with Jacoby Myers wanting to trade, if that situation was good, they, just brought in Amari Cooper, then you'd sit there and say, okay, they got a nice, nice tandem at receiver. There's a little something. Now there's this issue. When it comes to Seattle, it's just Sam can't try to do too much. You need the run game to be healthy, and just put your hat on the defense and see what you get.
Yeah. And the tricky part about their schedule is Seattle got no favors as far as consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Through their first 7 games up to the bye week, they are home, road, home, road, home. Like, they are back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So they can't settle in like, okay, let's be comfortable for a couple weeks and play at home. They can't be like, okay, guys, let's put the nose to the grindstone and be road warriors. It's just back and forth, back and forth. That's a lot of travel. And, of course, Seattle up in the Pacific Northwest, most of the time they've got the farthest length to travel to play anybody in the league, let alone their divisional, even though their division is still like 3/4 of the way down the West Coast. So that is a lot of travel, and they go back and forth until your bye week. This is a team that could be tired out pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, you wish that, you get, it's not like baseball where you get like 10 or 12 game homestands and, you get that routine of, sleeping in your bed and all of that. At Seattle, they're going to 1 week they're, home. Next week you're on the road. It's something that they're going to have to acclimate themselves to. But it's also just going to be, okay, let's get into the rhythm and they're going to have to figure out who they are rather quickly. That's just what it's going to be. Like, it's not going to be a high powered offense. It's going to be an offense that, is just going to, depend on the run and Sam to be the game manager and just move the ball well. But yeah, that schedule doesn't do any favors at all.
No. And even more in the second half, because they come out of the bye with 3 out of 4 on the road. They end the season with back-to-back road games. They only have 1 2-game home stretch, and it doesn't happen until week 15.
Well, how bad do you want to win the division? Let's get it going.
Yeah. So the Seattle Seahawks, they will be the winner of toughest team in the league if they can come out of this season with a semi-respectable record.
If they can somehow pull off, 10, 11 wins, and things kind of fall the other way for the Niners and the Rams, they could be in it till the end. Like I said, with the Rams and the Niners, it's all about the health. They have 2 positions that they need the health to hold up. So Seattle's got a chance. They just got to play almost perfect ball.
Yeah. Well, Bucks, McGee, we unintentionally had to do it in 2 shows tonight. But, sir, take us off air with your final thoughts for the AFC East and the NFC West.
All right, AFC East. It's the Bills' playground right now, but looks like New England might be coming back to reclaim the glory years. We'll see. NFC West, man, that's just like a walking wounded, man. Whoever can stay the healthiest in that division can win the division. Matt Stafford, stop shooting your backup, man. Go play golf, man. You deserve it. Retire. Arizona, just get it together, man. You guys are good. You got talent. Just get it together, please. It'll be fun.